Welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Shaun and Jim.
Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. I'm Jim Galante. He is Sean Gold. How we doing this week, Sean?
Doing well, Jim. It's kind of sad that another season has come to an end. I always Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Finals. I always get sad the day after because I'm so excited to have watched it, but I'm bummed to not get to watch it for a really long time coming up. So, we'll get some good reflections in today, though.
Well, it's always the NBA is over. Oh, but football training camp's here.
Exactly.
It's the nature of the sports fan, especially if you like all the sports. And this actually, I'll tell you what, we'll feed your jonesing for the NBA a little bit today. How about that?
I'm good with that today.
All right, let's hit it. Of course, we had a championship series. You and I have been talking about it for a couple weeks now. The fact that it was Oklahoma City and the Indiana Pacers, it didn't generate a lot of interest. We know that the television ratings were down. But for those who were paying attention, real nice series, 7 games, Sean.
A really, really nice series. Definitely happy to have watched this series too. It was a great matchup. Ended up being uber competitive. And while the series as a whole was down, Game 7 did get a big uptick in viewership, which just shows the power of what a Game 7 can do in sports too. They always say there's no two better words than Game 7. And, it was super unfortunate, I think, how it ended with Halliburton going down, and we'll talk more about that. That kind of cut the competitiveness of what this Game 7 was supposed to be because up until his injury point too, he was playing really well, shooting the ball great, and it looked like, is this going to be another kind of down to the wire, who gets the ball last type of game? And OKC in the end just powered through, and I think it's deserving. Even with the injury, OKC deserved to win this year. They were the best team from game one till the final game, of the NBA Finals, and I don't think anybody can argue against that. You had the MVP of the season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets Finals MVP too. That's not something we've seen in a long time. So it's funny because this was one of the most dominant stretches of an NBA season in history. I think they had the fourth or fifth most wins in the regular season in NBA history. Just I think the most 30-point wins in postseason history. And it's just kind of like, well, yeah, we expected that. If this was another team, we'd be talking about this is magnificent how dominant they were. But OKC just made it so normal that it was almost like, going back to when Russell Westbrook averaged a triple double for the second year in a row and wasn't in MVP voting anymore. And it's like, wait, if anybody else did that, that's unanimous MVP. For OKC, we knew that they were this good and they did exactly what they're supposed to do. So people didn't get overly worked up about it because we saw in the regular season them just continuously blow teams out. And then they do it in the playoffs and it's just kind of normal. But I think it really shows that this is a great team and they have a very good looking future set up for them as well.
They have a phenomenal future set up for them. But first, just my take on this game 7. We were going to end up with one of two things: either Oklahoma City winning it, where we would say, hey, most deserving team, they were the best team all year, and it's not one of these, the Lakers, the Celtics, the teams that have won year after year. It's somebody new, so that was kind of a nice story. Or you would have had the Indiana Pacers, who had such a phenomenal run through this playoffs, so many dramatic wins. The one thing I will say, as someone who didn't have a dog in this fight, what a real shame that Halliburton went down, because he was the one guy who, on the road in a game 7, really could have made this competitive to the very end. And the Pacers, I know, they stuck around. They were ahead at halftime, even.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unfortunate that we didn't see the Pacers at full strength. It also reminded me, I saw an article where the headline was, prior to game 7, if the Pacers win this, would they be the worst NBA champion in NBA history? I'll let you feel that question. Would they have been, Sean?
I don't know. I'm sure there's been somebody else. And what I think is so funny is the Indiana Pacers could have won the NBA Finals and would still be blatantly disrespected for doing so because the Thunder arguably have to go down as one of the best NBA champions we've seen here with the metrics. If you put the numbers out, and I get, it's like, well, you could get into more of the opinionated part. But if we're talking facts on how much they won, how much they blew teams out, this is one of the strongest NBA champions in NBA history. And if they lost this, Indiana would have been like, oh, well, you're still one of the worst. But you just beat a team that was historically great to get there. So I would disagree with that, with that article there. But it is just funny how the narrative still is against Indiana.
It would have been a fun championship for the Pacers. But switching back to Oklahoma City, what is really fascinating, and you alluded to it, how they are set up, Sean, to be a dynasty. And I want to look at two parts to this. I want to look in the past to how they got to where they are today, and then the future into where they can be. The trade that made this happen, Sean, they traded Paul George. Okay. If you're a Sixers fan, I'm sure you have an opinion about Paul George. Get this. This is the haul that Oklahoma City got for Paul George. Shea Gilgis Alexander. Danilo Gallinari. Okay, he's long gone, but count them. Five first round draft picks. They got the better of the deal with SGA over Paul George. And then they got an additional 5 first round draft picks, along with, in addition, 2 potential first round swaps with the Clippers. So here's what they've got going forward. So not only SGA, they already got Jalen Williams as one of the picks in this draft. But now here's what they have going forward, Sean. This year, they've got 3 first round picks, including 2 first round picks, number 15 and number 24. Okay. In 2025, 3 first rounders. In 2026, 3 first rounders. In 2027, they only get 2 first rounders. Then going further, in 28, they get 1 first rounder but 3 second rounders. In 29, 2 first rounders and 5 second round picks. In 2030, they have a first round pick and 4 second round picks. Sean, this has got to be the most incredible trade. And it got me to thinking, is there a trade anywhere else in sports history that is in any way comparable to this? And the closest I could come, and you were way too young to remember this, but in 1989, the Dallas Cowboys traded Herschel Walker, and they got 8 draft picks for him, which turned into Emmitt Smith plus. And they ended up winning, I think, 3 world championships in the decade of the 90s after making that trade. And you got to feel like Oklahoma City, already a current champion, with this kind of draft capital, they're going to win multiple NBA championships in the next decade.
I mean, they definitely should. And, it's funny because we said kind of the same thing about the Denver Nuggets after their first championship, and it looked like a dynasty in the making. It's really hard to get back, but I don't think we've ever seen a setup like Oklahoma City is right now. And the thought process for OKC was that they would use all these first round picks to trade for a superstar and get that veteran presence. Well, they just won a finals without needing to do that. So do I think that they're going to keep all those first round picks? No, because there's just not enough roster slots to be able to take on all those players. But you can reasonably think that OKC could have a better roster next year, the year after that, if they do trade some of these picks. And there's a lot of first round picks that can just be shelled out. And with other teams, when you trade away 4 or 5 first round picks, it really hurts you because you're losing a lot of your future. OKC can do that and say, we still got 5 to 10 more that we could trade again. So I think this is a very unique setup. And I don't think we've ever seen just draft capital like this in NBA history, let alone for a team that just won an NBA Finals. So if this OKC roster looks good, their next one could look even better because whatever superstar may want out at some point, OKC has one of the best stockpiles to go and get them. And I think the biggest thing for the Thunder here is just don't get in your own way. They've done such a good job of limiting egos. There's not an ego on that team. They're all together. Now, you do see sometimes when you start winning and when contract extensions come up, egos start to get in the way a little bit. So OKC is going to be their own worst enemy as they try to go and, go back to back or make a dynasty right here. And you got to look back to how the Warriors did it. Steph took pay cuts, Klay took pay cuts, Draymond Green took pay cuts. Also, they could get a Kevin Durant who ended up turning them into a dynasty. Can OKC stay out of their own way? And I think that's the only thing that can stop them here, because the talent and the assets there are well above any other roster in the NBA.
I think they need to be judicious with those draft picks. Overall, if I were to give advice to them, not that they need it, Sean, but I would try to package the draft picks to move up in the draft to get the next star kind of thing, player from the draft. If you're going to do a package to bring in a veteran star, be very careful how you do it. Remember their own history. The Clippers tried to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and they traded away their future for Paul George, and they then couldn't get rid of him fast enough. So that's what you're going to have.
Completely agree with that. They need to be smart about it, and they don't need to force anything. And I think that's what's great, is they're in no position to need to force a move, so they can still sit and stockpile and mid-season make a trade or something. There's a lot of possibilities for them. Now to segment kind of back over to Indiana. Obviously, you mentioned it earlier. A shame Tyrese Halliburton, gets hurt in Game 7, tears his Achilles. Not only does it change, that game, but it changes the future of Indiana too. He's out all of next season now, and for a team that wants to get back to the finals, you now have your superstar sidelined in that. I think there's more to this injury, rushing back from a calf injury. What are your overall thoughts on Tyrese going down? And we've kind of seen this, recently in the NBA as well. Some of these injuries becoming more and more common.
I think the other big name is Jason Tatum from the Celtics, going down with a similar injury. And this is a type of injury you lose an entire season, and potentially you may either not come back from it or not come back the same player. So it's a very serious injury, Sean, and it fascinates me when it's across any sport, these discussions. In baseball, is pitchers getting Tommy John surgery, and what is the cause of it? Well, I think a lot of these injuries, even across sports, is just these players are bigger, stronger, faster, and uh, you're getting players. A few years ago in the NFL, you'd have offensive linemen who were 280 pounds. Now they're 340 pounds. Well, guess what? The joints don't compensate for that increase in weight that they have to carry, the jumping up and down that happens in a basketball game, how fast the game is. They're better athletes, but that doesn't make their joints any stronger. That's my take on it. But it's interesting to hear some of the theories, and I'd like to get your take on this. Some of the talk is, well, is it load balancing, work balance, that these guys, load management, they're playing too many games. You play 82 games, you have a long playoff structure. Is that part of it? And I read something, and I'll follow up on this after your answer. But someone talked in terms of these players now. They don't wear the high top sneakers the way they did in my time. They wear the low cut for a little more mobility, ability to cut without being restricted at all. And maybe that's part of it. What's your take?
It's such a hard answer on that, and I don't think it's necessarily fair if I said that I think, shorten the season and everything, because like you said, we've seen instances in the past where, there were a lot of games and players made it through healthy and they actually played more games because they used to not take rests off. So it's kind of an impossible answer on this, but I will say, from, talking with some of my former athletic trainers and everything, I would like to know what injury prevention is going on for some of these teams. And I know when the Lakers were going through, a ton of injuries the past couple of years, one of my former trainers just said, I would love to see what they're doing. Like, why is this all happening? Because there's so much that precautionary actions that you can take to help strengthen, areas to be able to maintain all the force you need to be an NBA player. So I don't know if it's an issue of, some of these teams' training staffs are not getting them ready for the load that they're going to have to take, or if it is just, hey, wear and tear and we need to make adjustments. But the wear and tear part doesn't fully make sense to me, because we have seen throughout history players make it through long seasons, playing more games, playing more minutes, and come out healthy and do it again for, 15 years of their career. So I think it's a combination of stuff. And I really do wonder if the training and the treatment needs to be upped, and if there's more ways to just keep your players healthy.
There's a couple different paths to take here. One, reducing the load. Do you play fewer games? What's fascinating to me is the players would love it to play fewer games. They won't take less salary, mind
Hmm.
you, but to play fewer games. I often think, as I was alluding to earlier, that the size, the strength, the speed of the players is constantly upped in all sports over time. And I think that creates issues. I'll use the analogy again to baseball pitchers. Well, years ago, if you were 90 to 94, 95 on a fastball, you were a blazer.
Hmm.
Now, that's nothing. They almost all throw over 95. So they're throwing, full all out. They're throwing 98, 99 from the start and kind of being coached that way. Go all out for 5 innings. We don't need you to pitch 9 innings. And years ago, the Tom Seaver, Bob Gibson era, those guys didn't throw 100%. But if they needed it, they'd throw one pitch. They needed that big strikeout. Now, when you're playing basketball, you don't have that kind of option to go, oh, I'll play 90% or 95%. You don't have that option. But I also found it fascinating. I think it was Nick Van Exel, who was the player who said about wearing high top sneakers. And, I'm 65 years old, Sean. My days of playing basketball were in high school and then, on the playground after that. I would not step on a court with low top sneakers. I had issue with sprained ankles and so on. And just the very thought of playing a basketball game with low cut sneakers would scare me. I could feel the ankle start to turn and go. How much of that was psychological? I'm not quite sure. But there's that feeling of support that you got around your ankles with true high tops. I mean, the sneakers that went above the ankles. And I wonder if that's part of it. And my last theory is, you know what, Sean, maybe it's just random. It's the theory of, well, if it happens one time out of 1,000 and the next year it happens 2 times out of 1,000, that means the occurrence doubled. Okay. So it's really still a handful of guys. I'm not sure we can come to any conclusions.
No, I like what you just said there. That look, it's the NBA. Injuries are going to happen. The NFL, injuries are going to happen. Major League Baseball, injuries are going to happen. It is part of the game. It will forever be part of the game, no matter how advanced we get with protecting players in the next round of treatments. It's going to happen at some point. Something is going to break down. Like, these players do put so much stress on themselves and their bodies, and no matter how well you take care of it, something is still going to happen. LeBron is not the normal type of player. Like, that's his body is built different than other people's, and we see, like, he's kind of set the standard, and Tom Brady set the standard for a while, even though Brady did miss, I think he had an ACL in his career as well. But you see these guys who go so many years without an injury. That's not going to be everybody. We're going to see season-ending injuries. We see it a ton in the NFL. Typically, week one, 3 or 4 players of marquee names go down for the season. And it's like, what's wrong with the NFL? It's like, it's going to happen. Something's going to happen in training camp. Something's going to happen in a game, in practice. It's inevitable. Injuries are just a part of the game. They will forever be, no matter how advanced we get with injury prevention and different equipment to protect them.
it does happen, and it's amazing how many baseball players have gotten hurt. They jump up on a home run to hit the home plate, and they rip something up, or
Yeah.
in a team celebration. I also think, a LeBron James, you're right. It's a bit freakish. He's got the incredible body, but you know what? Sometimes it's just dumb luck.
Mhm.
Injuries can be very, very random. So we've been talking about all NBA action, current players. But Sean, this week it's time to talk about the future of the NBA. The draft is coming up. The Mavericks, they are going to take Cooper Flag. That's set in stone. Pretty much set the Spurs to take Dylan Harper. After that, with the Sixers, that's when the draft's really going to start, Sean.
100%. And I just want to say I'm so excited for draft night, NFL draft, NBA draft, two of my favorite days of the year. It's fun watching the future of the league enter the stage. And it like you said, this is the future of the NBA here. And Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, they're the headlines, but there's a lot of talent in this draft that I think, not everyone realizes. And I'll say two things about it. One, I'm hoping to see a lot of trades. I love the draft day drama that we can get. So any trades that can happen, I'm all in on it. Hopefully there's a superstar that, there haven't been rumors about that's going to end up getting traded that will come out of nowhere and just shock the league. But I want to go into three players for everyone to keep an eye on that are not Cooper Flag and Dylan Harper. Shooting is one of my biggest pluses that I can look at in an NBA draft. We see players, maybe they're not as athletic or don't have as high of a ceiling, but they can shoot the lights out and they're the ones that end up sticking around in the NBA longer. So here are three pure shooters for everyone to keep an eye on. Number one, probably the best shooter in the draft, Con Knuppel from Duke. Did I just steal your
My God,
thunder with
you
that one?
stole my thunder there, but go ahead. Keep going.
So he was at one point considered a low lottery pick, and now he's almost guaranteed, I'd say, to go in the top five. And he is the best pure shooter in this draft. I think whoever he lands with, could be the third overall pick, is going to be very happy with the production they get out of him. Number two, Trey Jones, shooting guard out of Texas. Anytime you get a college guy compared to Ray Allen, your eyes got to open up about what the potential of Trey Jones could be here. And I think that he's going in the top 10 now. Or Trey Johnson, sorry, I said Jones, but Trey Johnson out of shooting guard out of Texas. He'll go in the top 10. He'll be an instant, plug and play spot up shooter for somebody. He can shoot off the move. He can come around screens, catch and shoot. That's exactly what you need in today's version of the NBA. Think of, what Ray Allen did, but more recently what Klay Thompson has done and all these other guys. He's going to be a great pick for somebody. And then likely a day two pick that I think will pay dividends is Kobe Brea, a senior wing out of Kentucky. Played 5 college seasons, 43.4% from three. Quick release. He's a guy that every NBA roster, what do you look at the end of the day and say you need more of? You need more three-point shooting in today's NBA. I think he will be in a rotation somewhere, and I think he's going to go on day two. And you really build a championship team when you can hit on some late round draft picks. And I think this is a guy who could very well end up being in a rotation year one.
Very good analysis there. A couple thoughts on this. Yeah, I'm a Con Knipple guy. Okay, and what sold me on him, and this is one of those small sample sizes, but you see a player do something, and you're like, aha, there's a guy. And over the years, and I'm going to go into the Wayback Machine again. I remember years ago watching a college game, watching Michigan State, and there was this young point guard who was much bigger than any other point guard by the name of Magic Johnson. I saw him in one game. I was sold. That's all I needed to see. I'm not saying Con Knipple is Magic Johnson. I'm just saying the impression you get. But in the ACC tournament this year, when Cooper Flag was out hurt, Con Knipple, he took over the game. He took charge. He knew at that point it was up to him to step up and be the guy. And he was. So I've been very, very high on him. The other thoughts within the draft, Dylan Harper is going to be the number 2 pick. We're all convinced of that. Number 3 was supposed to be Ace Bailey, and
Hmm.
he's been falling down in the draft. You wonder, he's not gone to meetings with the Sixers. Almost, he doesn't want to go there. It's pretty obvious. He's trying to manipulate it. But it also makes me ask a question that we asked during the collegiate season. If Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, both from Rutgers, are two of the best three best players going into this draft, how in the world does Rutgers not even make the tournament? So as good as they are individually, I it makes me question, especially Ace Bailey.
Yeah, it's really interesting with that, and it takes me back to Markel Fultz and his draft year when he was on Washington, and Washington wasn't a tournament team either. So it's how much does production lead to wins? And of course, you always want your players to be you're drafting them to bring you wins, not just bring you production. And it's I never know how to properly judge it from a college scale to an NBA scale, and it's the fact that you had two, even if Bailey slides, two probably top 5 players in the draft not lead your team to a tournament appearance. It just doesn't make much sense. But then we also see teams that go really deep in the tournament that are filled with, I would say older players who are maybe juniors and seniors, not get drafted at all, but they had crazy production that led to winning. So I would like to get it more inside the mind of an NBA scout and see how much does winning mean anything when you're going into the draft.
Well, it's fascinating to me, and it kind of brings up the Moneyball analogy. What gets undervalued? And I feel from an outside perspective that those veteran players in college, and by veteran player, we're saying someone who's 21 years old or 22 years old, Sean, I think they get undervalued. I was looking at a mock draft. The first 11 players are coming out as freshmen in college. Freshmen. And that's not even counting now how many of the international players who are very young are part of this. So you mentioned a player, in this going in the second round that eh, you know because he's been there for 4 years, they don't want him. The scouts, I feel they really value the young players and say, "We'll develop them. Give us the 18-year-old, the 19-year-old, and we'll develop them." I think what you're ending up though, you're taking a risk though with players that young. Some are pretty obvious. I think Cooper Fly is going to be a really good NBA player, Sean, but chances are history tells us, the top 5 picks that you want to think are sure things, not going to be the case.
Completely agree on that. And it's funny because the NBA, like you said, such a developmental league. It's kind of opposite of what the NFL is. You now want your NFL guys to come in and be the guy from day one. And if you got to put in the work to get them, you're not going to draft that person because you don't want to go through that process. So it's a completely different flip. And I mean, we've seen incredible instances. Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo were not the first overall pick in their draft, but if you went Dak and did a redraft, they'd be pick 0 instead of pick 1 because they're that good. And it's so different. So scouts really do like if you've got, the makeup will make you into what you should be. And that's why I still side on, yeah, you want that high ceiling, but we've seen a lot of guys in the NBA draft go in the top 5 picks, and what was their knock was that they weren't a great shooter. Super athletic, can get to the rim. Well, it's a little bit harder to get to the rim when you now have NBA defenders on you, and shooting becomes such a big necessity in the NBA, which is why I would rather, if I'm a team, get somebody who I know is going to be able to knock down shots and fit them into a system versus somebody who's super athletic but hey, their jump shot may never develop. If you do not have a jump shot, even if you're a center now today in the NBA, if you do not have a jump shot, there's very few players who still make it in the league that can't shoot a 3-pointer at 35% and up.
Last I looked, Sean, the team that wins is the one that gets the most points. You put the ball into the hoop. All right, Sean, that is it for the show. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you join us again next week on Shauns Take.
Keystone Sports Network.